Hello fashion lovers, you're welcome back to my channel. Trust you're good, trust you're doing well. In today's video, we are going to be learning an advanced way of making your pencil skirts. So we are going to be learning the hip allocation method, where we'll consider the front hip and the back hip before drafting the skirt. So this method is not the method where you divide your hip by 4. So we are going to be assigning more hip to the back. So that's basically what hip allocation method is, and it's advisable you know how to draft your normal basic skirts, the normal basic skirts that we all know, before jumping to this video. You have to pay close attention so you'll be able to understand this video, because there is a lot of calculations on this video, but trust me, I'm going to make it as simple as possible so you'll be able to understand it. Please, this video might not be beginners friendly, but even if you're a beginner, you can still watch it so far you know how to draft your basic skirts. Alright guys, let's dive into the video. So to get started, I've gone ahead to draw a female structure. It might not be perfect because I'm not good at sketching or drawing, but I hope you understood what I drew here. So this is the back view of the female structure, and this is the waistline, which is always the tiniest part, and then this is the hip line. So you can see that this is how the female body is. We have all the curve at the back, or the buttocks. This is how our body is, and then this is the side view now. So this is the side view of the female structure, so that you get to understand it better. So here is the waistline. So here is the waistline, and here is the hip. So from the waistline, like this is the back view, but the side view of that back view now, and this is the front. So from the side view, you will see that the back hip is more curvy than the front. Did you see how the front is? So this is the waist down. Some people's, from their waist down to the hip is straight, like from their waist down to the hip is to the knee or whatever is straight, because they have flat tummy. Some people, their waist is a bit curvy, but though we are not considering the waist, so you are considering the hip now. So from the side view, you will see that the back hip is more curvy or more protruding than the front part. Did you see that? So having this knowledge will help you in drafting your skirt. So if you know that your back hip is more curvier than the front, you should be able to allocate more space to the back hip and then a lesser space to the front hip, because the back hip and the front hip are not the same. So what I wrote there is the hip is not supposed to be divided by 4. Our hip measurement is not supposed to be divided by 4. We should have the front hip differently and the back hip differently, because of the curve at the back, or because of our buttocks at the back. So when you do this is going to help you to draft a perfect pencil skirt. So if we divide our skirt by 4, if the person is a slim person, it might fit well. But if the person has a big or protruding hip, like is on a very big size, the skirt might not fit well. So that is why we are going to be constricting how the best way for us to make our skirt using the hip allocation method, where we allocate more to the back hip and less to the front hip. So let's dive into the calculation. So to consider how much we are going to be adding to the back hip is going to depend on the difference between the waist and the hip measurements. So to determine how much measurement we're going to add to the back is going to be determined by the difference between your hip and the waist circumference. So if the difference between your hip and your waist circumference is 0 to 2.5 inches, we are going to divide the hip by 4. It means there is no much thing to be added to the back. So, but if the difference between the hip and the waist measurement of the person is between 3 inches to 3 to 5 inches, 3 inches to 5 inches, we are going to deduct 0.5 from the front hip, and we are going to add the 0.5 to the back hip. So if the difference between the person's hip, the hip and the waist of your client is between 5.5 to 7.5, you are going to deduct 1 inch from the front waist and add it to the back hip. Sorry, you are going to deduct 1 inch from the front hip and add it to the back hip. So if the difference is between 8 to 11 inches, you are going to deduct 1.5 from the front hip and add it to the back hip. And then if the difference is from 11.5 and above, you are going to deduct 2 inches from the front hip and add it to the back hip. So let me just go ahead and rewrite all this the way you will understand it. So let's say 0 to 2.5 inch is new, like you are dividing your hip by 4. 3 to 5 inches, you remove 0.5 from the front hip and add to the back hip. So if it is 5.5 to 7.5, it will be 1 inch. If it is 8 inches to 11 inches, you will deduct 1.5 from the front hip and add to the back hip. So if it is 11.5 inches and above, you are going to deduct 2 inches. So let me just remove this part. So this is the one we are going to be making use of. So this is the value now. So let's go into the formula now. So for the front hip, the formula for the front hip, it is your hip circumference divided by 2 minus whatever value you got, whether 0.5, whether 1 inch, whether 1.5, whether 2 inches. So do you understand? So the front hip is equal to hip divided by 2 minus whatever value you have from calculating your client's difference between the front, the waist, and the hip. So for the back hip, it is your hip divided by 2 plus whatever value you got. So you don't just go and add any value for your client. So if you want to get the value, you have to check the difference between your client's waist circumference and the hip circumference. It's from that you're going to get your client's value, whether you're going to divide the person's hip by 4 or you're going to divide you're going to subtract 0.5, 1 inch, 1.5, 2 inches from the front hip and add to the back hip. So these are my measurements. My hip is 36 plus 1 for ease is 37. Then my waist is 26 inches. So if you check the difference between my waist and my hip circumference, I will have it as 9 inches. So when you check where 9 inches fall, it will be that 8 to 11 inches, which is 1.5. So this is where my own value falls. So my hip is 37 and my waist is 26, and the difference is 9 inches. So by the time I check my own value, I will have it as 1.5 for my own value. So you have to check for yourself, check for your client, and know what to use, whether 0.5, 2 inches, 1 inch. So this is my formula now. My back hip is 37. 37 is my hip divided by 2 plus 1.5. My own value is 1.5. So by the time I divide 37 by 2, I will have it as 8.5 plus 1 inch. 1.5 inches is going to give me 20 inches. So my back hip is 20 inches. So for my front hip, we divided 7 by 2 plus minus 1.5, right? Minus 1.5. So I'll have 8.5 minus 1.5 will give me 17 inches. So my front hip is is 17 inches, while my back hip is 20 inches. By the time I add two of them together, I will still have my 37 inches. The only difference is that my back hip is 20, while my front hip is 17 inches. Trust me, these calculations are very simple. You just have to take your time to get that perfect skirt measurement. So for the waist now, if you have a big tummy, you might consider using this formula for your waist. But if you have a flat tummy just like me, you'd go ahead and divide your waist by 4. So if you have a big tummy, you can divide your waist by 2 and then add 0.5 for the front waist. And for your back waist, you divide your waist by 2 and subtract 0.5 or even 1 inch if you have a big tummy. So this applies for people that have big tummies. But if you have a flat tummy just like me, you go ahead and divide your waist by 4. For me, I'll be dividing my waist by 4, which is 26 divided by 4 will give me 6.5. But if you have a big tummy, you can consider removing 0.5 or 1 inch from your back waist and add to the front waist. So that is if you have a very big tummy, and then you just use this formula and get it. For me, I'll be dividing my waist into 4. Before we go into the drafting of this skirt, I believe you understood everything that I've just explained, the calculations, the formula. Please, if you do not understand, you can rewatch this video to understand it better before watching the drafting of this skirt pattern. And please, if you find value in this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Just please like this video. That is all I'm asking from you. Like my video and share before you continue watching. Alright guys, let's go into the drafting of the skirt. We are going to start by drafting the front part. So I've ruled a line of about 1 inch, and here is going to serve as my starting point line, which is also the waistline. So from there, I'll go ahead and mark my hip depth, which is where we are going to mark the hip measurement, and then I'll go ahead and mark the length of the skirt, which is 22 inches. I'm making use of 22 inches, which is my knee length. So you mark your hip depth and then mark the length of the skirt, and then I will go ahead and roll the line. Just follow me as I do so. So as you can see, I'm done rolling the line. So the first one I'm going to be drafting the front waist. So from here, I'm going to be drafting the front pattern, sorry. I'm going to, on the waistline, mark 1/4 of my waist circumference and then mark 1 inch for my dart. So on the hip depth line is where I'm going to mark my hip measurement, and my hip measurement is 17 inches for the front part, and we are drafting one part of the front. So 17 inches divided by 2, whatever it gives me is what I'm going to mark on the hip. So 17 inches divided by 2 is 8.5. So on the hip depth for the front, I'm going to mark 8.5. You remember that our front hip is 17 inches. So divided by 2 is 8.5. On my front hip depth, I marked the 8.5. Hope you are cleared. So I'll go ahead and mark 8.5 inches on my front pattern. This is going to be the width of my pattern, the 8.5 inches, which is my front waistline. The half of my front waistline is going to serve as the width of my front pattern. So the 8.5 is what I marked all over. I just marked the 8.5 to get the width of the front. So you are going to divide your front hip by 2 and then mark. This is going to give you the front width. So from my waistline, you want to connect, from this waistline you want to connect to your hip line. Did you see? But don't connect to the hip directly. You can stop 1 inch or 1.5 inches above the hip. So on the hem part, I will subtract 1 inch from the front hip. From the hem part, I will subtract 1 inch to get my hem measurement. So for my hem part, I use 3 inches when drafting my hem part of a skirt. If the person is slim, I use 3 inches. If the person is on a medium size, I use 4 inches. But if the person is on a plus size, I use 5 or 6 inches. For this part, I'm using 3 inches. So on the hem part of the front, I subtracted 1 inch from the hip measurement. So on the back part, I'll be subtracting 2 inches, making everything 3 inches. Hope you're cleared. So you go ahead and mark your darts, get the midpoint of your bust span measurements, take 1/2 inch on both sides and mark your darts. I believe this is very simple. So let me go over what I did. So on my waistline, I marked 1/4 of my waist circumference plus 1 inch for that, and I connected from the waist to the hip line. So for the hem part, what I have on the hip line, which is 8.5, I went to the hem part, subtracted 1 inch from it, which is now 7.5, and marked as my hem part. So on the hip is 8.5, on the hem part is 7.5. Subtract 1 inch from it and mark. So for the waistline, you know the human waist is not straight, so you want to come down from your waist center front by 1 inch and then make a curve like this. Sorry, I made a mistake here. I actually realized the mistake when I was done with the drafting. So we are supposed to connect it to the side seam, not on that line. So I'm going to correct it later. So this is what we have. You want to come down from your waistline by 1 inch, 1.5 if you have a very big tummy, and then make a curve just the way you see me do for the waistline. So for the back part now, from this line you want to mark half of your hip measurement. My back hip measurement is 20 inches divided by 2 will give me 10 inches. So I'm marking 10 inches, getting my back width. The back width is half of the back hip measurement. So my back hip is 20 inches divided by 2 is 10 inches. So what I marked here is 10 inches, which is going to be the back width of the width of the back part. So this is 10 inches, which is my hip measurement. So here is going to be the center back. So before you start drafting, you want to come inward by 1 inch from the back. So from this human structure, from the back waistline to the hip or the buttocks is not straight. You can see it is not straight, and because of that, we need to have this slanty effect on the back part. And for us to do that, we need to come inward from the center back by 1 inch for us to achieve this, because from the waistline, back waistline to the hip is not straight. So we're not going to keep our pattern straight. Please bear in mind that from the back waistline to the buttocks is not straight, and because of that, we'll be going inward by 1 inch from the center back or from the back waistline to achieve that effect. Let's continue. So from the back waistline, you go inward by 1 inch and then you connect it straight to the hip. This is just to achieve that effect, because from our back waistline to the hip is not straight. So you want to observe that. So from that point now, from this point is where you will take your waistline, and then your 1 inch for the dart. So from that place, I mark 1/4 of my waistline plus 1 inch for my dart, and then I'll go ahead and connect this straight to the hip. Like you stop 1 inch above the hip or 1.5 inch above the hip. So this is how your skirt pattern for the back should look like. This is how it should look like. That curve on the back should be observed. You don't keep your skirt straight on your pattern straight on the back. If you do that, you're not going to have a very good fitting. There will be gaping at the back. The zip will be gaping, especially if your client is on a very plus size or has a very big buttocks. So you need to consider that. I use 1.1 inch or 0.75 inch for the small and medium size, but for a very plus size, I can go inward by 1.5. So you want to raise the side seam by 0.5 and then connect. I also did that for the back. You have to for the front, sorry, you have to raise your side seam by 0.5 inch to connect, just the way we do our basic skirt. So for the hem parts now, I took 1 inch from the front, but for the back I will be taking in 1 inch. So what we are going to do is come inward by 1 inch from the hem part like this and then connect, because from the buttocks to the new line is still not straight. So we want to observe that. So from your whatever thing you have on your hip, right, which is 10 inches, you want to come to the hem part and subtract 2 inches from it. From the front part, we subtracted 1 inch from our hip, but from the back part I am subtracting 2 inches. I have it as 10 inches for my back hip, but on my hem I'll be marking 8 inches, subtracting 2 inches from it. Did you see? 10 inches, you subtract 2 inches and you mark 8 inches. So for the hem part, you want to come inward by 1 inch to connect your hem, because from your buttock to the hem part is also not straight. Hope you are cleared of this. If you need to rewatch this video, if you're a beginner, you might need to rewatch this video to understand it. Trust me, this is very simple. So this is what we have for the back. So this is how your back pattern should look like. If I'm drafting this back pattern for a very plus size, you will see the curve and everything. You will see all the curves, but because I'm on a slim side, so that's how my own is. So for your own or your client's own, you might end up having a very big curve depending on your body structure. So this is how you draft your skirt, considering your hip and your hip. Yes, you consider your hip while drafting. So this is called hip allocation. So I'm going now to mark my zipper allowance of 1 inch. So I'm taking it straight like that. I'm following that curve to mark my zipper allowance. So if you are fixing your zipper, you are also going to follow the curve and fix your zipper. By the time you are done sewing this skirt, trust me, you will love the effect. You will love the effect. Trust me, you will love the effect. So you want to try to curve around here. So this is the zipper allowance. So this is basically what we have, the zipper allowance. So if you have any question, please don't forget to leave the question for me on the comment section. And if you have not given this video a like, I don't know what you're still waiting for. Kindly give this video a big thumbs up. So the next thing now is to cut out our pattern. So I made a mistake here, like I said earlier, from the waistline, the side seam of the waist. So you want to raise it up by half an inch. On the back waistline, we raise it by half an inch on the side seam. So you want to go and raise it up by 0.5 inch, which is half an inch on the side seam. Please don't get confused. Just come to your side seam and raise it up by 0.5, and then you remark your waistline. So I made a mistake. I went to I marked it to get to that hip, the width of the skirt pattern, which is not supposed to. It's supposed to stop on the side seam. So you want to go ahead and remark this. So this is what I want. So I'm a bit fast so that this video will not be too long. I know it's already long, but it's just for us to understand what we are doing. So the next thing is to mark our band. I do not remove the band while making the skirt. So I marked everything from my waistline to the hip depth. So I'm removing my band of 1.5 inch. So I'm going to follow the waistline to mark 1.5 inch all around, and then connect the line. So this is my this is my skirt band. This is my skirt band. So you also want to do that for the back. You want to mark 1.5 inch depending on the size or the height of the band you're making use of. For me, I'm making use of 1.5, so I'm going to mark 1.5 and then follow the waistline curve and then connect it. Go ahead and cut out this pattern. So this is what we have. I believe you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give me a big thumbs up, leave your comment on the comment section, and please do share this video. And if you have not yet subscribed, please do subscribe. Just follow me as I cut this pattern. So as you can see, I'm done cutting the pattern and I've gone ahead to label it center back, side seam for the back, and center front, side seam for the front. So if you want to sew this pattern, you want to go ahead and close up the darts line. If you want to cut this band, sorry, if you want to cut this band, close the darts on it, and then you want to tape it like this to cut your band. So this is basically how you make your advanced skirt with the hip contour. So if you want to cut this pattern, the center front will be cut on fold while the back will be cut in 2 pieces. Then you add your sewing allowance on the waistline, on the side seam, on the hem parts. You want to add all your necessary sewing allowance all around it. Thank you for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.